The letter came wrapped in oilcloth, not paper, as though someone feared the rain more than they feared him. Duke Alaric Cardew turned it over twice before he broke the seal. No wax crest, no ribbon, just a plain knot of twine, tied the way a stable boy ties a gate shut. His butler, Preston, stood near the door of the London townhouse, hands folded, eyes fixed on some point past the Duke's shoulder. "Who brought this?" "A girl, Your Grace. She would not give her name. She said only that it must reach your hand before nightfall." Alaric broke the twine. 6 lines. No greeting. No signature. "They tell me the boy is not well. If you wish to see him breathe again, come to Selby House before the physician does. Do not send word ahead. Do not trust the coachmaster. Come alone." He read it 3 times. The boy. There should have been no boy. There should have been no reason for his wife's hand, for he knew it was hers. The same slant, the same pressure on the downstrokes. To write to him at all. Not after 3 years. Not after Selby House had gone silent as a shuttered church. He had married Marguerite Selby for her family's shipping fortune. And, quietly, for the way she laughed at things that were not funny to anyone else. He had left her within the first year. After a night in the orangery he still could not think about without his jaw tightening. He had told himself it was betrayal. Everyone had agreed with him. That was the trouble with everyone agreeing with a man. It let him stop asking questions. Now there was a boy. Alaric folded the letter into his coat and called for his horse, before he had decided anything at all. The road to Selby House ran through fog thick enough to swallow hedgerows. Rain found the collar of his coat and ran cold down his spine. He did not stop to change horses. He did not stop for anything. By the time the gates rose out of the mist, black iron gone soft with rust, it was well past midnight. No lamps burned in the windows. That was the first thing wrong. A house with a sick child kept lamps burning. A house hiding something kept them dark. He left the horse at the gate and went in on foot, boots silent on wet gravel, the way he used to move as a boy, avoiding his own father's temper. The front door stood unlatched. Inside, the hall smelled of cold ash and beeswax polish applied too recently, as if someone had spent the evening making a house look undisturbed, rather than making it clean. A woman's voice drifted down from the upper floor, not Marguerite's. "Settled, I told you. He will not wake before the physician arrives, and by then the paper will be signed." Alaric stopped with one hand on the banister. Signed. He climbed without a candle. He found them in a chamber at the end of the east corridor. A single lamp burned low there, the only warm light in the whole cold house. Marguerite stood over a narrow bed, a housekeeper's shawl thrown over her nightclothes, her hair unpinned and damp at the temples, as though she had not slept in days rather than hours. A small boy lay in the bed, chest rising in short, shallow pulls, a wet cloth across his brow. The other woman in the room, silver-haired, dressed for a dinner party rather than a sick room, turned first. "Alaric," she said it the way one greets a draft under a door. "This is a private matter." He said, "Come alone," Alaric said. He did not say, "Arrive unwelcome." Marguerite had gone very still. She did not run to him. She did not weep. She looked at him, the way a woman looks at a debt she has stopped expecting to be paid. "You came," she said. "I was told to. I did not think you would." He looked past her to the boy. Dark hair, a small crease between the brows even in sleep, the exact furrow Alaric's own mother used to smooth from his forehead with her thumb when he was small. His mouth went dry. "Whose child is this?" the silver-haired woman answered, before Marguerite could draw breath. "A ward, Your Grace. Taken in out of charity. Nothing more. I did not ask you, Lady Ferrers." Marguerite's hand had found the boy's small fist and closed around it. "His name," she said quietly, "is Thomas." Alaric's chest tightened in a way he did not have a word ready for. "Thomas," he repeated. "Your father's name." she said. "I did not know if you would ever come to hear it said aloud." Lady Ferrers moved toward the door, as though summoned by some errand. Only she could hear. "The physician will be here within the hour," she said. "Perhaps His Grace would prefer to discuss the paper downstairs, where the child need not be disturbed by grown voices." Alaric's eyes cut to her. "What paper?" Marguerite's fingers tightened around her son's hand. "Nothing that concerns you," Lady Ferrers said smoothly, already at the threshold. "Everything in this house concerns me," Alaric said. "I own the roof over it." For the first time, something in Lady Ferrers' composure slipped. A flicker, gone as fast as it came. But he had spent enough years in courtrooms and card rooms to know the look of someone recalculating. She left without another word. Her footsteps did not fade down the stairs. They stopped, just out of sight, in the dark of the corridor, waiting. Alaric crossed to the bed. Up close, the boy's breathing had a catch in it, a small hitch every fourth breath, as if something sat on his chest that had no business being there. "How long has he been like this?" 3 days, Marguerite said. "Since the tea." Lady Ferrers insisted he take for his throat. Alaric's head came up slowly. "Since the tea." Marguerite did not look away from her son's face. "I have not let anyone else near the cup since." Somewhere below them, a door opened, then closed. Then the soft, deliberate sound of a key turning in a lock that had no business being locked at this hour. Marguerite's head snapped toward the sound. "That is the front door," she whispered. Alaric was already moving. Alaric reached the top of the stairs before the sound stopped echoing. Below, in the dark hall, a shape moved past the window glass, quick and low, the way a person moves when they do not want to be seen from the road. He took the stairs 2 at a time, boots striking hard against old wood. The front door stood locked from the outside. He tried it once, twice, then pressed his ear to the seam. Wheels on gravel. A horse pushed to speed too fast for a quiet country lane. Someone had left in a hurry, and someone had made certain he could not follow. Behind him, Marguerite's voice came thin down the stairwell. "Alaric." The window. He turned back and took the stairs again, faster this time, back into the sick room, where she stood at the casement, one hand pressed flat against the cold glass. "There," she said. "The stable path." A lantern bobbed along the tree line, already too far to catch on foot. Alaric looked at the boy, still breathing in that same shallow, catching rhythm, and made himself stay in the room, rather than chase a shadow into the dark. "Who was that?" "I do not know." Marguerite's jaw was tight. "But I know who they answer to." She would not say Lady Ferrers' name again that night. Not directly, as though saying it too often might summon her back up the stairs. Instead, she knelt beside the bed and pressed her wrist to her son's forehead. The old way, the way mothers checked for fever before thermometers were trusted. "Warm," she murmured, "warmer than an hour ago." Alaric crouched beside her. Up close, he could see faint marks at the boy's throat. Not bruises exactly, more like the pale shadow bruises, leave once they have almost healed. "What is this?" Marguerite's hand went still over the marks. "He does not remember," she said carefully. "But 3 nights ago, I found him at the top of the stairs, in his nightshirt, walking as though asleep. Lady Ferrers said he had wandered. I found finger marks on his collar the next morning." Alaric's stomach turned over slowly, like a stone rolling in cold water. "You think someone carried him?" "I think someone tried to." He looked at his son's face again. 3 years. He had not known this child existed. 3 years. He had let a house of strangers raise questions he had never thought to ask. "Why did you not send for me sooner?" Marguerite's eyes lifted to his, and for the first time that night, he saw something other than exhaustion in them. Anger, banked low, old enough to have stopped burning bright and started burning steady instead. "I sent word 4 times in his first year," she said. "Each letter came back unopened, marked refused, in your solicitor's hand." After the fourth, I stopped asking a door to open that had already told me its answer. Alaric's jaw worked. I gave no such instruction. Then someone gave it for you. The name neither of them said, yet hung between them anyway. Downstairs, a floorboard creaked. Both of them went still. Marguerite reached for the poker beside the cold hearth, the movement quick and practiced. A woman who had learned to arm herself with whatever was nearest. Alaric moved to the door and eased it open. The corridor was empty, but at the far end, where the stairs curved down into shadow, a single candle burned in a dish, left on the floor, as if someone had set it down to free both hands, then forgotten to come back for it. He picked it up, wax still soft, still warm. Someone had been standing there long enough to listen. He carried the candle back into the room and set it on the washstand, where its light fell across Thomas's face. The boy's eyelids fluttered, not waking, but close to it, his small hand twitching against the blanket. "Papa," the boy murmured, so quietly it might have been the wind finding a gap in the window frame. Marguerite's breath caught. Alaric went very still. "Does he know that word?" "I have shown him your portrait since he could walk," she said. "I told him his father was away at sea." It was easier than telling a small boy his father simply did not come. Something in Alaric's chest cracked along a line he had not known was there. He knelt by the bed and, for the first time, let his hand rest over his son's smaller one. "I am here," he said, and did not know if the words were meant for the boy or for himself. By morning, the physician had still not come. Alaric sent Preston's counterpart in the country house, a stiff, careful steward named Meade, to fetch the doctor from the village himself, with strict instruction to speak to no one else along the road. While they waited, Alaric searched the house. He found the nursery first, tucked behind a false wall of bookshelves in the old schoolroom, a space clearly built for hiding rather than for play. A cot, a window painted shut, a door that locked only from the outside. He found the ledger next, in a drawer in Lady Ferrer's private sitting room, a room he entered without asking, because ownership of a house came with certain unspoken rights when a child's life sat in the balance. The ledger recorded payments, not household expenses. Payments to a physician in a neighboring county, a man with no license Alaric recognized, for what the entries called treatments for delicate temperament. And beneath that, in smaller, more careful hand, a second set of entries. Payments to a firm of solicitors in London for the drafting of guardianship transfer, pending certification of the mother's continued instability. Alaric read the phrase twice before its full shape settled into him. They were building a case, not against him, against Marguerite, and the boy, sick and small, and calling him Papa in his sleep, was the leverage that would make her sign whatever paper waited to be placed in front of her. He heard footsteps behind him, and turned to find Marguerite in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes already on the open ledger in his hands. "You found it," she said quietly. It was not a question. "How long has this been happening?" "Since the winter." He turned too. "Since I refused to send him away to be schooled somewhere, Lady Ferrers approved of, and I did not." Her hands twisted in her skirts. "She told me if I made trouble, she would tell the courts I was unfit. She told me you would believe her before you would believe me." She was not wrong to think it, Alaric said, and hated himself for the truth of it. "I did believe her, once, about other things." Marguerite's chin lifted, some old steel finding its way back into her spine. "Then believe something else now," she said. "Believe your own eyes." A cry rose from the sick room down the hall, sharp and sudden, Thomas's voice breaking through fever into something closer to panic. Both of them ran. Thomas's small body had gone rigid against the sheets, his back arched, his breath coming in short, broken pulls that did not sound like a child's breath at all. Marguerite reached him first, gathering his shoulders against her chest, murmuring words that were not really words, just sound, meant to anchor him. "Turn him," Alaric said. "On his side. Now." She did not ask why. She simply obeyed, the two of them moving together for the first time in 3 years. A single instinct, instead of two separate griefs. Thomas's eyes opened, unfocused, glassy with fever, and then slowly found his mother's face. "Mama, I am here." His gaze slid sideways and found Alaric kneeling on the other side of the bed. For a moment, the boy simply looked at him, the way a child looks at something half-remembered from a dream. "Papa stayed," he whispered. Alaric's throat closed around whatever he might have said back. He only nodded, and rested his hand once more over his son's smaller one, and held on. The rigidity passed as quickly as it had come. Thomas's breathing eased, ragged but steadier, and his eyes slid shut again, this time into something that looked more like sleep than collapse. Marguerite did not move for a long while. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were dry, but there was a rawness in them that dryness could not hide. "That is the 3rd time," she said. "Always after the tea." Alaric looked at the empty cup on the side table, a thin brown residue clinging to the bottom. "Then we stop the tea," he said. "Now, entirely." Meade returned near midday with the village doctor, a broad, unhurried man named Harker, who examined Thomas with the calm thoroughness of someone who did not care whose house he stood in. He lifted the boy's eyelids, pressed 2 fingers to his throat, smelled the dregs in the cup Alaric handed him, without a word of explanation. Harker's brow furrowed. He tipped the cup, studied the residue, touched a fingertip to it, and then to his tongue, spitting the taste out at once into a handkerchief. "Foxglove," he said. "In small doses, a tonic for a weak heart. In doses like this, meant to look like illness, rather than cure it." Marguerite's hand went to her mouth. "How long has the child been given this?" Harker asked. 3 days, that I know of," Marguerite said. "Perhaps longer." "Then it is a mercy he is as strong as he is." Harker set the cup down carefully, as though it were evidence in a courtroom, rather than crockery in a nursery. "Stop it entirely. Keep him warm. Keep him fed on plain broth, and he will mend. Slowly, but he will mend." Relief moved through Alaric, so suddenly, his knees nearly gave under him. He had not realized, until that moment, how much of his weight he had been holding up on dread alone. Harker glanced between the two of them, then at the ledger still sitting open on the side table, where Alaric had left it. "I would also say, Your Grace, purely as a country doctor, and not a man of law, someone in this house has been building a very careful picture of a boy too sickly to thrive, and a mother too troubled to be trusted with him. That is not medicine. That is preparation." "I am aware," Alaric said grimly. "Then I would suggest you finish what you have started, before the person responsible finishes it first." Lady Ferrers had not returned by nightfall. Meade reported that her carriage had been seen on the London road before dawn, moving fast, and that 2 of the household staff, a man named Grissom, who served as her personal secretary, and a maid who had tended the nursery, had gone with her. "Running," Alaric said, "looks a great deal like guilt." He sat that evening in the small study off the nursery, the ledger open before him, a fresh sheet of paper beside it, on which he had begun, in his own hand, a record of everything he now knew: the unopened letters, the false instruction given in his name, the locked nursery, the foxglove, the solicitors retained without his knowledge to draft a transfer of guardianship, built on a lie of instability she herself had manufactured. Marguerite sat across from him, a shawl around her shoulders, her eyes moving over the paper as he wrote. "You believe me now," she said. It was not quite a question. "I believe the ledger," Alaric said. "I believe the marks on his throat. I believe a physician who has no reason to lie to either of us." He set down the pen. "I should have believed you 3 years ago, without needing any of this as proof." "You believed what was easiest," Marguerite said, "without cruelty. Only fact. It is easier to believe a woman betrayed you than to believe the people around you did. He did not argue. There was nothing honest to argue with. What did you see? He asked instead. The night in the orangery? I never let you tell me. I decided I already knew. Marguerite was quiet a long moment, her fingers worrying the edge of the shawl. Lord Pemberton followed me out there uninvited, she said finally. I was trying to get past him to the door when you came in. You saw his hand on my arm, and decided that was the whole story, before I had said a word. Her voice did not shake, though something old and tired moved behind it. Lady Ferrers told you, afterward, that I had arranged the meeting myself. You did not ask me. You asked her. Alaric closed his eyes briefly. He remembered that night with a clarity he had spent 3 years trying to blur. Marguerite's face pale in the candlelight, Pemberton's hand where it should never have been, and his own fury arriving before his reason had a chance to catch up. He had walked out of that house the next morning, and never properly walked back in, not even in memory, until a letter wrapped in oilcloth had forced the door open again. I am sorry, he said. It felt inadequate, even as he said it. It will take longer than one evening to be sorry enough. Then we have time, Marguerite said, since you are staying. It was the closest either of them had come, that night, to hope. The solicitor's letter arrived 3 days later, forwarded from Alaric's London address by Preston, with a note of some alarm attached. It requested, in careful legal language, His Grace's signature on a document certifying the Duchess's unfitness, so that guardianship of the minor Thomas Cardew might be transferred, for the child's protection, to a trustee to be named. The trustee, unnamed in the letter itself, required no naming. Alaric already knew. He rode to London himself, rather than send Preston, taking the ledger, the ruined cup, carefully wrapped and preserved, and Dr. Harker's written statement, sealed and signed, describing exactly what he had found in a country nursery, 3 days' ride from the city. He did not warn Lady Ferrers he was coming, the way she had once taught an entire household to move quietly ahead of unwelcome truths. He found her at her townhouse, taking tea in a room papered in pale green silk, as composed as she had been the night he'd found her standing over his son's sickbed. Alaric. She did not rise. I confess I expected a letter, not a visit. I have brought the ledger, he said, setting it on the table between them, careful not to disturb her tea, and Dr. Harker's statement, and the cup. For the briefest moment, something moved behind her eyes. Not fear exactly, but the recalculation of a woman who has just watched a carefully built structure begin, very quietly, to fail. Foxglove, she said at last, is commonly given for weak hearts, in doses meant to heal, Alaric said, not in doses meant to build a case for a courtroom. She set down her cup with great precision. You would take the word of a country doctor and a frightened woman over the aunt who raised you after your own mother died. I would take the word of my son, Alaric said, who is 3 years old and has never once lied to me, because he has not yet learned how useful a lie can be to people who need one. Lady Ferrers' composure did not break, not fully, but something in her shoulders settled, like a woman sitting down at last after holding a pose too long. I did what I believed necessary, she said. Marguerite's family had trade money, and no title worth protecting. I thought, given time, you would thank me for keeping the line clean of her influence. You nearly poisoned my son to make your case convincing. I gave him medicine that made him convincingly unwell, she said, with the terrible precision of someone who had never once considered her actions a crime. I did not intend harm. I intended leverage. He is a child, Alaric said, not leverage. She looked at him then, and for the first time in his memory, Lady Ferrers looked old. You will ruin the family name over a shipping girl's son. I will save it, Alaric said, by telling the truth before you tell a more convenient lie. The magistrate's inquiry took the better part of a month. Lady Ferrers did not go to prison. Her age and her name bought her a quieter fate. A small house in the north, far from London, far from Selby House, far from a boy she had once tried to make disappear on paper before she attempted it in fact. Grissom, her secretary, gave testimony in exchange for leniency, and it was his account, more than any ledger, that finally closed the case beyond doubt. Thomas recovered fully within 6 weeks, color returning to his cheeks, strength to his small legs, until he ran the garden paths at Selby House, shouting commands to an army of imaginary soldiers, exactly as a 3-year-old boy ought to. Alaric did not return to London. He stayed through the autumn, then the winter, learning slowly what it meant to be present, rather than merely titled, learning his son's laugh, his stubborn refusal to nap, the particular way he held his mother's hand when uncertain, and Alaric's when brave. He and Marguerite did not fall back together easily, nor quickly, nor without long evenings of hard, necessary conversation. But they walked the garden paths together each morning, a small distance between them at first, then less. One evening, as winter's first frost silvered the hedgerows, Thomas ran ahead of them both, shouting for his wooden horse, and Marguerite glanced sideways at Alaric, with something that was not quite forgiveness yet, but stood very close beside it. "You are still here," she said. "I intend to be," Alaric answered. "Every morning after this one." Thomas turned back at the end of the path, holding his horse aloft like a banner, calling for them both to hurry, and for the first time in 3 years, Alaric Cardew ran toward something instead of away from it.